Hi everyone, my name is Isabella Davila, and today we are going to be talking about imperialism. So from this week's history talk, I learned that U.S. imperialism was about the United States expanding its power beyond its own borders. So imperialism is when a country gains control over the lands. This could be through wars, treaties, or purchases. So before this lesson, I feel like I mainly thought that the U.S. only expanded across, North America, but I actually learned we talked a lot about how in the late 1800s it started building an overseas empire and how it kind of started to become a world power. One of the biggest things that I learned from this past week was that the U.S. had several motives for imperialism. So one of the reasons was economic. The United States wanted access to new markets where American businesses could sell products and get resources. Another reason was military power. So having territories like Hawaii and the Philippines gave the U.S. important naval bases, and it helped them protect trade routes across the Pacific. There was also political reason because the U.S. wanted to compete with other powerful countries that were also building empires. So some Americans also believed that they had the responsibility to spread their American ideas and cultures to other parts of the world. They kind of saw it as their duty, we had talked about in the history talks. Another thing I learned was just that the United States gained land in different ways throughout history. So for example, it bought land like the Louisiana Purchase in Alaska. It made treaties with places like for Florida and for Oregon. And it gained territory through wars, including the Spanish-American War was another thing I have for my notes. And the Spanish-American War started because Cuba was fighting for independence from Spain, and the violence was affecting American business and citizens. And so then, the explosion of the USS Maine, there was different factors that increased support for the war. And so after Spain lost in 1898, I have in my notes, Cuba became independent, while the United States gained Puerto Rico and Guam, and they bought the Philippines for $20 million. This was just an important turning point because it was also another example of the United States becoming a major world power. And another question we're supposed to answer is, when it comes to Johnny Harris's argument, how do you feel about that? And I would say that I agree that the Philippines were closer to being stolen than liberated or conquered. And I just believe this because at first the United States said it was helping free the Philippines from Spanish rule. So many Philippines expected to become independent after Spain lost. However, instead, the United States bought the Philippines from Spain, and then they took control of the islands. So when Filipinos fought for their own independence, that's when we saw that the Filipino-American War began. And I don't think liberated is the best word, because even though the United States helped end Spanish rule, it didn't actually give the Philippines their freedom right away. Instead, it just kind of replaced Spain as the new ruling power. And I also don't think conquest is necessarily the best word, because the United States simply didn't defeat the Philippines in a war and take the land. It received control, we learned in my notes I have, through the Treaty of Paris after the Spanish-American War, and then they fought to keep the territory when the Philippines resisted. So that is why I believe that the word stolen fits best. The Filipino people, they wanted independence, but instead another country took control of their land without their agreement. So one thing that really stood out to me was that the Spanish-American War was about ending Spain's imperialism, but the Philippine-American War kind of just showed that the United States had become the imperialist power itself, and that just kind of was like a new perspective, and I thought there was a lot of irony in that. So overall, this lesson helped me understand just more about imperialism and how we use political power to just gain more land and more power throughout the world.